September 19th, 1863, Chickamauga Creek, Georgia. The morning fog clung to Chickamauga Creek like a funeral shroud. Captain Thomas Halloway crouched behind a fallen oak, his hands trembling as he reloaded his Springfield rifle. The 15th Ohio had been fighting since dawn, and the screams of wounded men mixed with the thunder of artillery until he could no longer tell them apart. Welcome to the Channel Unknown Facts of 1861. Here we uncover the hidden sides of the American Civil War, untold stories, haunted battlefields, soldiers' final letters, forgotten crimes, human suffering, slavery, and the secrets that shaped a nation's fate. Subscribe and leave a comment to keep receiving narrated, dark and well-researched historical content. Captain! Confederates pushing through the center. Lieutenant Ben Foster dropped beside him, his face blackened with powder smoke. Longstreet's corps, thousands of them. Tom peered through the smoke. Gray uniforms emerged from the tree line like phantoms, their rebel yell cutting through the chaos. His company, what remained of it, was dangerously exposed. Fall back to the Brotherton farm. Tom shouted. Controlled retreat! Cover each other! The Union line collapsed like a dam breaking. Men ran in all directions as Confederate forces poured through the gap. Tom fired, reloaded, fired again. A mini-ball whizzed past his ear. Another tore through his sleeve. Ben! Get the men across the creek! Tom covered their retreat, firing methodically despite the hell erupting around him. Then the world exploded. The artillery shell struck 10 feet away. Tom felt himself lifted, weightless for a moment, before crashing into the creek bed. Cold water filled his lungs. Blood clouded his vision, his own or someone else's, he couldn't tell. His ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything. Through fractured consciousness, he saw boots splashing past him. Confederate soldiers. One paused, rifle pointed at his chest. This one's done for, the soldier said, his voice distant and warped. Leave him. Darkness swallowed Tom whole. October 1863, Confederate Field Hospital, northern Georgia. Tom woke to agony. His head felt split open. Every breath sent lightning through his ribs. He tried to speak, but his throat was raw from screaming, screams he couldn't remember making. Easy now, a voice said. A gray-haired man in a blood-stained apron appeared above him. You've been unconscious for 2 weeks. Severe head trauma. We didn't think you'd make it. Tom's lips moved.
Where am I?
Confederate Field Hospital. You were found in the creek after Chickamauga. No identification, no papers. What's your name, soldier? Tom opened his mouth to answer. Nothing came. He searched his mind desperately, clawing through fog and pain, but found only emptiness. No name, no regiment, no memory of anything before waking in this blood-soaked tent. I don't know, he whispered. The surgeon frowned. Amnesia. I've seen it with head wounds. Might come back, might not. He gestured to the gray uniform in the corner. We found you in Union blue, but you're a prisoner now regardless. When you can walk, you'll be transferred to Andersonville. Tom stared at the canvas ceiling, his mind a void. Somewhere he knew someone was waiting for him. But he couldn't remember who. Couldn't remember his own face in a mirror. The war had taken more than his health. It had taken his very self. November 1863, Halloway Farm, Missouri. Sarah Halloway stood on the porch, her hand shielding her eyes from the autumn sun. The mail rider appeared on the horizon, and her heart clenched with the familiar mixture of hope and dread she'd felt every day since Tom left. 7-year-old Ellie tugged her skirt. Is it Papa? Is Papa coming home? Hush now, sweet girl. Sarah's voice barely held steady. The rider dismounted, his face grim. He handed her a single envelope, official War Department stationery. Sarah's hands shook as she opened it. Dear Mrs. Halloway, it is with profound sorrow that I must inform you that Captain Thomas Halloway was killed in action at the Battle of Chickamauga. September 19, 1863. He died bravely in service to his country, the letter continued. But Sarah couldn't read through her tears. The porch tilted beneath her feet. Mama? Ellie's small voice seemed to come from miles away. 4-year-old James toddled out of the house, too young to understand why his mother had collapsed to her knees, too innocent to know that his father would never teach him to ride a horse or plant corn or be the man Tom had promised to help him become? Sarah clutched the letter to her chest and wept. Somewhere in Georgia, her husband lay in an unmarked grave. The war had devoured him, as it had devoured so many others. She didn't know, couldn't know, that at that very moment, Tom was alive, sitting in chains in a Confederate prison wagon, staring at his own hands as if they belonged to a stranger, searching desperately for any scrap of memory that might tell him who he was. The man she mourned was gone, but the man who remained had no idea she existed. December 1863, Andersonville, prison, Georgia. The prison was hell on earth. Tom, though he still didn't know that name, huddled in the corner of the overcrowded stockade, watching men die from disease, starvation, and despair. 14,000 prisoners crammed into a space meant for 10,000. No shelter, contaminated water. Guards who shot anyone who crossed the deadline marked 20 feet from the walls. He'd been assigned a number, prisoner 4027. It was the only identity he had. You got a name, Ohio. The man beside him was skeleton thin, his Union uniform hanging like rags. I'm Corporal Isaac Morris, 6th Kentucky. I don't remember my name, Tom said, the admission still strange on his tongue after 2 months. Head wound at Chickamauga. Isaac studied him with sunken eyes. Amnesia. Saw it happen to my cousin after Shiloh. Took him 6 months to remember his wife's face. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. You got people out there somewhere wondering if you're alive. Tom stared at his hands, calloused, scarred, foreign. Maybe, or maybe I'm nobody. Maybe I was always nobody. Every man's somebody to someone, Isaac said. You just gotta survive long enough to find out who. But survival seemed impossible. Men dropped dead daily. The prison creek ran brown with waste. Scurvy rotted gums. Dysentery hollowed out bodies. Tom watched friends, men whose names he learned only to forget when they died, waste away. He survived through stubbornness alone. When his mind offered no past, he focused on the present. One breath, one heartbeat, one day at a time. April 1865, Andersonville, the war's over. The shout rippled through the prison like electricity. Lee surrendered. Lincoln's declaring amnesty. Tom stood with thousands of others, too stunned to process it. 4 years of war, over, just like that. Union soldiers arrived weeks later to liberate the prison. They stared in horror at the skeletal survivors, the mass graves, the evidence of suffering beyond imagination. Dear God, a young lieutenant whispered. What did they do to you? A Union medical officer examined Tom. Name and regiment, soldier? I don't know, sir. Head wound. Can't remember. The officer made notes. We'll send you to a recovery hospital. Try to identify you through records. You've got scars, distinctive features. Someone might recognize you. But the war had created tens of thousands of missing men. Records were incomplete, destroyed, or hopelessly confused. Tom became one more ghost in a nation of ghosts, alive but unidentified, freed but lost. June 1865, Union Recovery Hospital, Virginia. Tom sat in a ward with 50 other broken men, some missing limbs, others, like him, missing pieces of themselves that couldn't be seen, any memories. Dr. Samuel Richardson asked during daily examinations. Fragments, Tom said. A woman's voice. A child laughing. Fields of corn, but nothing solid. Nothing I can hold on to. The mind protects itself sometimes, the doctor said. Trauma can lock memories away. They might return spontaneously or never at all. After 3 months, the hospital discharged him. They gave him civilian clothes, $20, and a letter stating he was an unidentified Union veteran suffering amnesia. Go to the cities, Dr. Richardson advised. Show the letter. Someone might know you. Tom wondered. Richmond, Washington, Baltimore. He showed his letter to veterans' organizations, posted notices, searched faces in crowds for any spark of recognition. Nothing. Money ran out. He took work where he found it, loading docks, construction sites, farms that needed hands. He drifted through the devastated South like a ghost, watching a nation try to rebuild itself while he couldn't even rebuild his own identity. September 1868, Halloway Farm, Missouri. Sarah stood in her wedding dress, simple grey cotton, all she could afford, and looked at Robert Dalton across the parlour. Reverend Crawford held his Bible, waiting. "Sarah," the Reverend said gently, "are you certain?" She glanced at Ellie, now 12, and James, 9. They needed stability. The farm needed a man's strength. And she was so tired of being alone. "I'm certain," she whispered. Robert was kind. A Confederate veteran from Missouri who'd lost his own wife to typhoid during the war. He didn't try to replace Tom. He knew that was impossible. He simply offered partnership, help, a future. "Do you, Sarah Halloway, take Robert Dalton?" She said yes. The words felt like betrayal, but also like survival. That night, she placed Tom's daguerreotype in a drawer, alongside his letters and the flag from his memorial service. Ellie cried herself to sleep. James asked if he should call Robert Papa now. Sarah didn't know how to answer. She'd loved Tom with everything she had. But love couldn't raise children or harvest crops or hold her when nightmares came. She'd mourned for 5 years. 5 years of waiting for a dead man to come home. It was time to live again. March 1870, railroad construction camp. Tennessee Tom, still nameless to himself, swung a sledgehammer, driving spikes into railroad ties. 7 years since Chickamauga. 7 years of emptiness. During lunch, he sat with other workers. An older man, a former Confederate surgeon, told war stories. "Chickamauga," the surgeon said. "Bloodiest thing I ever saw. We pulled Union boys out of the creek for days. Most were already dead. Few survivors. We sent to Andersonville." The word struck Tom like a physical blow. Chickamauga. A flash. Water in his lungs. Explosions. A voice shouting a name. "Captain Halloway." "Fall back!" Tom dropped his tin cup. "What? What did you say?" The surgeon blinked. "About Chickamauga." "No, the name." Tom's heart hammered. "Halloway." I didn't say any name, but Tom had heard it. Clear as day. A memory, surfacing after 7 years of darkness. That night he stared at the stars, whispering the name over and over. Halloway. Thomas Halloway. Other memories followed, trickling like water through cracks. A woman's smile. A farmhouse, Missouri. Children, Sarah, Ellie, James, his family. Tom stood, hands shaking. 7 years. They thought he was dead. He'd been declared dead. What had happened to them? Were they still in Missouri? Still alive? He had to find out. He had to go home, even if home no longer wanted him. April 1870, on the road to Missouri, Tom walked the roads he'd once marched as a soldier. Tennessee, Kentucky. The scars of war still marked the land. Burned plantation houses reduced to chimneys. Abandoned trenches overgrown with weeds, towns that had been shelled into rubble and rebuilt with mismatched lumber. His memories returned in fragments, like a shattered mirror, slowly piecing itself together. He remembered enlisting in 1861, the excitement and terror of his first battle. He remembered Sarah's face the day he left, how she'd pressed a lock of her hair into his palm. He remembered Ellie singing while she gathered eggs, James learning to walk, but the memories felt distant, as if they belonged to someone else. 7 years had passed. He was 39 now, no longer the man who'd marched away to war. His hair had gone grey at the temples. Scars covered his body. His hands shook sometimes, and loud noises made him flinch. What if they didn't recognize him? What if they didn't want him back? At a veterans' hospital in Louisville, he stopped to confirm his identity. A clerk searched through records, frowning. "Captain Thomas Halloway, 15th Ohio Volunteer Infantry," the clerk read. "Declared killed in action, September 1863. There's a death certificate, sir. Official." "I know," Tom said. "But I'm alive. I was a prisoner. I had amnesia. I need documentation proving who I am." The clerk looked uncomfortable. "This is highly irregular. I'll need to send inquiries to your former regiment. Find surviving officers who can identify you. Could take weeks. I don't have weeks. My family thinks I'm dead. Sir, legally speaking, you are dead. Until we can prove otherwise, you're a ghost. Tom left with a signed affidavit, weak documentation, but something. He continued north, working odd jobs for food and passage. At night, he practiced what he'd say when he reached home. "Sarah, it's me. I'm alive. I know it's been 7 years, but what? What words could bridge 7 years of grief and absence? May 1870, approaching Missouri. The closer Tom got to home, the more his anxiety grew. He stopped at a roadside tavern in eastern Missouri, needing to gather his courage before the final leg of the journey. An old soldier sat at the bar, a Union veteran by his worn kepi. Tom bought him a drink. "You from around here?" Tom asked. "Born and raised." "You?" "Passing through." "Looking for?" "An old friend. Halloway Farm, about 20 miles west." "You know it!" The veteran's expression shifted. "Halloway?" "Yeah, I know it. Widow Halloway, well, Mrs. Dalton now. She remarried couple years back after her husband died in the war." The words hit Tom like a cannonball to the chest. Remarried. Of course she had. 7 years. He'd been declared dead. She'd mourned, moved on, rebuilt her life. What had he expected? That she'd wait forever for a ghost? "You all right, friend?" the veteran asked. "You look like you've seen a spirit." "I'm fine," Tom lied. His voice sounded hollow. "The new husband, he good to her?" "Robert Dalton, Confederate vet but a decent man. Helped her keep the farm running. The kids needed a father." The veteran sipped his whiskey. "War's been over 5 years. Time to let old wounds heal." Tom nodded mechanically. "Let old wounds heal. But what about wounds that refuse to close?" He left the tavern and walked into the night. The stars above were the same stars he'd seen from Andersonville, from battlefields, from all the places he'd wandered lost. But now they seemed to mock him. "You're too late. You're too late. You're too late." Still, he kept walking. He had to see them, even if just from a distance. Had to know they were safe, happy. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe he could fade away again. Let the dead stay dead. May 12th, 1870. Overlooking Halloway, Farm Tom stood on the ridge at dawn, looking down at the farm he'd built with his own hands. The house looked the same. White clapboard, front porch, the oak tree where he'd hung a swing for Ellie. Smoke rose from the chimney. Chickens scratched in the yard. A man emerged, Robert Dalton, tall and lean, moving with the stiff gait of someone carrying old injuries. He headed to the barn. The door opened again. Sarah. Tom's breath caught. She was older, of course. Lines around her eyes. Her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. But still Sarah. Still the woman he'd loved more than life itself. She called toward the barn, laughing at something. The sound carried on the morning breeze. A sound Tom had thought he'd never hear again. 2 children appeared. Not children anymore. Ellie was 14 now, nearly grown, helping her mother hang laundry. James was 11, carrying a bucket toward the barn. They looked happy, healthy, whole. Everything Tom had fought for, everything he'd suffered for, was right there in front of him. And he was the one thing that could destroy it. If he walked down that hill, if he revealed himself, what would happen? Sarah would have to choose between her legal husband and her dead but not dead first husband. The children would be traumatized. The community would be scandalized. Legal battles would ensue. Marriage law had no precedent for ghosts returning. Tom sank to his knees in the grass, tears streaming down his face. He'd survived Chickamauga, survived Andersonville, survived 7 years of wandering. But this, watching his family live without him, this was the cruelest wound of all. A voice spoke behind him. "You planning to sit up here all day, or you gonna go down there?" Tom spun. Lieutenant Ben Foster stood there, leaning on a crutch, his left leg missing below the knee. Ben, his old friend, his brother in arms. "Ben," Tom whispered. "How did you— Saw you in town yesterday. Heard you asking about the farm. Figured you'd be up here working up your courage." Ben sat beside him with a grunt. "Took me a minute to recognize you." 7 years, Tom. 7 goddamn years. "Where the hell have you been?" Tom told him everything. The amnesia, the prison, the wandering, the slow return of memory. Ben listened without interrupting. When Tom finished, Ben was quiet for a long moment. "You can't just disappear again," Ben finally said. "They deserve to know you're alive. They've moved on. I'll only hurt them. You'll hurt them more if they find out later that you were here and left. That you chose to stay dead." Ben gripped Tom's shoulder. "This won't be easy. Hell, it might be the hardest thing you've ever done. But you owe them the truth." Tom looked back at the farm. Sarah was walking toward the house now, her hand shading her eyes, looking up at the ridge, looking directly at him. For a heartbeat, their eyes met across the distance. Then she was running toward him, her skirts hiked up, calling a name that was both his and not his anymore. "Tom! Tom!" And Tom was running too, stumbling down the hill. 7 years of grief and longing propelling him forward. They met in the middle of the wheat field, the golden stalks swaying around them. Sarah stopped 3 feet away, a hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "It can't be. You're dead. They told me you were dead." "I know," Tom said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She reached out slowly, her fingers touching his face as if testing whether he was real. Then she collapsed against him, sobbing, and Tom held her for the first time in 7 years. Both of them shaking with the impossible reality of his return. The dead had come home. But what home could accept him now? May 12th, 1870, Halloway Farm, late morning. The house felt like a museum of his former life. Tom sat at the kitchen table, his table, the one he'd built before the war, while Sarah stood across the room, her back against the wall, staring at him as if he might vanish. "I don't understand," she whispered. "They sent me your effects, your canteen, your letters. They said you were killed." "I was lost," Tom said. "Wounded, captured. I couldn't remember who I was for years. By the time my memory came back," he gestured helplessly, "I was already dead." The door burst open. Robert Dalton stood there, his face pale. Ben Foster had gone to fetch him from the barn. "Sarah, what's happening?" Ben said. Robert stopped, seeing Tom. "Who is this?" Sarah's voice trembled. "Robert, this is Thomas. My first husband." Robert stared. "That's impossible. He died at Chickamauga." "I thought so too," Sarah said. "But look at him. The scar above his left eyebrow from when he fell off the barn roof. The way his right hand shakes. He broke it when we were courting. It's him, Robert. God help us, it's really him." Robert's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and finally a dawning horror. No, this can't be happening." Tom stood slowly. "I'm sorry. I never meant—" "Sorry." Robert's voice rose. "You're sorry? Do you have any idea what you've done? Sarah is my wife now. Legally married. Those children call me father. We've built a life here." "I know," Tom said quietly. "I saw from the ridge. I saw how good you've been to them. Then why did you come back?" Robert's hands clenched into fists. "Why couldn't you stay dead?" The words hung in the air like poison. Sarah made a small sound, almost a whimper. "Robert, please." "Please what, Sarah? What am I supposed to do?" "Just step aside. Pretend the last 2 years didn't happen." Robert's voice cracked. "I love you. I love those children. This is my home too now." Footsteps on the porch. Ellie and James burst through the door, having heard the shouting. "Mama, what's wrong?" "Who's—" Ellie stopped, staring at Tom. James hid behind Robert's leg. "Who's that man?" Sarah knelt, tears streaming. "Children, this is your father, your real father. He's been gone, but he's come home." Ellie's face went white. "That's not Papa. Papa's dead. We put flowers on his grave. There's no body in that grave, sweet girl," Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm alive. I'm here." James started crying. "I don't want him. I want Papa, Robert." The words shattered something in Tom's chest. His son, his own flesh and blood, didn't know him, didn't want him. To James, he was a stranger. Robert was the only father the boy could remember. Robert picked James up, holding him protectively. "It's all right, son. I'm here." The tableau froze. Robert holding James, Ellie pressed against Sarah, Tom standing alone like an intruder in his own home. Ben watched from the doorway, his face grim. "I'll go," Tom said finally. "I shouldn't have come." "No." Sarah's voice cut through the room like a whip. "No one's going anywhere. Not until we figure this out." "Figure what out?" Robert demanded. Sarah, you can't seriously be considering— I don't know what I'm considering, Sarah shouted, then covered her mouth, shocked at her own outburst. In a quieter voice, I need time. We all need time. This is impossible. All of it, May 13th, 1870, Dr. Webb's office. The town doctor examined Tom thoroughly, documenting his scars, his injuries, comparing them to military records Ben had retrieved from the county clerk. It's him, Dr. Marcus Webb confirmed. No question. The scars match. The healed fractures match. This is Captain Thomas Halloway. He looked at Tom with something like pity. Though legally you're in unprecedented territory, Reverend Crawford sat in the corner, his Bible in his lap. The law says a man can't have two wives. But Sarah's marriage to Robert was legal. Thomas was declared dead. She committed no sin. So what happens now? Ben asked. That's for the courts to decide, Dr. Webb said. And for these people to decide in their hearts. The law can tell them what's legal. Only God can tell them what's right. Tom stared at his hands. I'm a problem without a solution. You're a man without a country, the Reverend said gently. The war created thousands like you, missing, presumed dead, lost in the chaos. Most never came home. You did. Now you must face the consequences of surviving. May 15th, 1870, town meeting hall news spread through the community like wildfire. The dead soldier returned. Halloway's ghost made flesh. The town gathered, drawn by curiosity and scandal. Sarah stood before them, her face haggard from 3 sleepless nights. I won't defend myself to you. I mourned my husband. I did what I thought was right for my children. Now he's back and I don't know what to do. But this is our family's business, not yours. It's all our business, old Mrs. Patterson said sharply. This is a Christian community. We have moral standards. Then show some Christian compassion, Ben snapped, standing on his crutch. This man served his country, suffered in ways you can't imagine. He deserves better than your judgment. A Confederate veteran stood, Daniel Pierce, who'd fought at Chickamauga. I remember that battle. The Union casualties were catastrophic. If he says he was wounded and captured, I believe it. Others murmured agreement. The community was divided. Some sympathetic to Tom's plight, others scandalized by the situation, most simply uncertain about what was right. Judge Morrison, the county magistrate, spoke up. Legally, both marriages have claim to validity. Sarah was a widow in good faith when she married Robert, but Thomas's prior marriage was never legally dissolved. This will require a court decision. How long? Sarah asked. Months, maybe a year. You'll need lawyers, testimony, documentation. Tom stood. Stop, all of you, just stop. His voice was raw. I don't want to put Sarah through this. I don't want to traumatize the children further. I'm the ghost here. Let me stay that way. Tom, no, Sarah started. You've made a good life, Sarah. Robert is a good man. The children are happy. What kind of man would I be if I tore that apart? Tom looked at Robert. Take care of them, love them. That's all I wanted anyway, for them to be safe and loved. He turned to leave. Wait. Ellie's voice stopped him. The girl stood, trembling but determined. I remember you. Tom turned slowly. I remember, Ellie continued, tears streaming. You used to sing to me before bed. Lorena, you said it was Mama's favorite song. And you taught me to skip stones at the creek. 5 skips was my record, her voice broke. You can't just leave again. I already lost you once. Tom's composure shattered. Ellie, I don't know what the right answer is, Ellie said. Maybe nobody does. But you're my father. You came back from the dead. That has to mean something. James, still clinging to Robert, looked up at his stepfather. Papa Robert, is the man really my first papa? Robert's face was anguished. Yes, son, he is. Are you going to leave us if he stays? I don't know. Sarah stepped forward, standing between both men, her face wet with tears. I loved you, Tom. I loved you more than my own life. When they told me you were dead, part of me died too. But I survived. I had to for them. She looked at Robert. And I've come to love you too. Not the same way, maybe, but real, true. Sarah, Robert said hoarsely. I can't choose, she said. God help me, I can't choose between you. The man I thought I'd lost forever, and the man who saved us when we needed saving most. She looked at the gathered crowd. So judge me if you want. Call me wicked. But I won't choose. Not today. Not until I understand what God wants from this impossible situation. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Tom and Robert locked eyes. In that moment, they weren't rival husbands. They were two war veterans who'd survived hell and found themselves facing a battle neither knew how to fight. A battle where everyone would lose something, no matter the outcome. The arrangement was impossible, yet it was all they had. Tom took up residence in the small barn loft, close enough to see his family, far enough to maintain the fragile peace. Robert remained in the house. Sarah moved through her days like a woman walking a tightrope, trying to be fair to both men while her heart tore itself apart. The children struggled most. Ellie spent hours with Tom, hungry for the father she'd lost, but felt guilty abandoning Robert. James remained wary, calling Tom Sir instead of father, confused by the sudden appearance of a man who claimed to be family. The community whispered. Some brought food and sympathy. Others crossed the street when they saw Sarah in town. The scandal was delicious to some, tragic to others. Tom worked the farm alongside Robert in tense silence. They repaired fences, plowed fields, harvested early corn. Two men who should have been enemies, bound together by love for the same woman and children. One evening, after the children were asleep, the three of them sat on the porch, an awkward triangle of broken hearts. "This can't continue," Robert said finally. "It's destroying all of us." "I know," Tom said. "I should leave." "I will leave." "No," Sarah's voice was firm. "I've lost you once, Tom. I won't lose you again by my own choice. But you'll lose me," Robert said quietly. "If he stays, I can't. I won't be a third wheel in my own marriage. I have some dignity left." Tom looked at the man who'd taken his place. "You've been everything I couldn't be. A husband, a father. You saved them, Robert. That matters more than bloodlines or legal documents. Then why are you still here?" Robert's voice held no anger, only exhausted confusion. "If you really believe that, why not just go?" Tom was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm selfish. Because I spent 7 years being no one, and now that I remember who I am, I can't let go of it. Even though I should." Sarah stood abruptly. "I need to tell you both something. Something I've been afraid to say." She gripped the porch rail, her back to them. "When Tom left for war, I made him promise to come home. Made him swear it. The last thing I said was, 'Don't you dare die on me, Thomas Halloway.'" Her voice cracked. "And when they told me he was dead, I felt like I'd killed him with that promise. Like he'd tried so hard to keep it that he suffered even more." She turned to face them, tears streaming. "Then Robert came into our lives. Kind, patient, steady. He asked nothing but to help. And slowly, so slowly, I started to heal. Started to forgive myself. Started to imagine a future again." She looked at Robert. "I love you, I do. You brought me back to life." Robert's face softened. "But Tom," Sarah continued, turning to him, "you were my first love, my greatest love, the father of my children. When you walked out of the mist like Lazarus rising, it wasn't just you coming back from the dead. It was every dream I'd buried, every hope I'd forced myself to abandon. And I can't just kill those things again, not even for peace. So what do we do?" Tom asked. "There's no happy ending here, Sarah." "Maybe not," she said. "But maybe we stop trying to find one. Maybe we just live, day by day. Figure it out as we go. The law won't allow it," Robert said. "Eventually, a judge will decide. One of us will have to leave. Then we have until then," Sarah said. "However long that is." August 1870, Sunday service. Reverend Crawford stood in the pulpit, his congregation watching with rapt attention. Everyone knew he'd been counseling the Halloway family privately. "We speak often of resurrection," he began. "Of Christ rising from the dead, of souls reborn. We celebrate these miracles. But today, I want to talk about what happens after the miracle. After Lazarus rose, he had to go back to living. Back to eating, working, facing the people who'd mourned him. The resurrection wasn't the end of his story. It was a new, complicated beginning. Tom sat in the back pew, separate from Sarah and Robert and the children, but all of them listening. In our community, we're witnessing our own resurrection," the Reverend continued. "A man we declared dead has returned, and we don't know what to do with him. Some want him to go away, to stop complicating things. Others want a neat solution, legal, moral, simple. But life isn't simple, and God's grace doesn't always arrive in packages we understand. He paused, letting the words settle. What I do know is this: we're commanded to love, not to judge, not to gossip, not to demand answers we ourselves couldn't provide. These people, he gestured toward the Halloway family, are suffering. They're trying to do right in a situation where there is no clear right. The least we can do is show them compassion instead of scorn. After the service, something shifted. Not acceptance exactly, but a softening. People greeted Tom cautiously, invited the family, all of them, to communal events. The scandal remained, but the viciousness faded. It wasn't much, but it was something. October 1870, the first Frost Tom taught Ellie to shoot, the way he'd promised to before the war. She was a natural, her eyes steady, her hands patient. They talked about everything and nothing: school, books, her dreams of becoming a teacher. "Do you wish you'd never come back?" she asked one afternoon. Tom considered carefully. "Sometimes. When I see how hard this is on all of you. But then you ask me a question, or James finally smiles at me, or your mother laughs at something I say, and I think, maybe I was supposed to survive. Maybe there's a reason I'm still here." "What reason?" "I don't know yet. Maybe just to see you grown. To know that everything I suffered for had meaning." James warmed to him slowly. Tom helped the boy with his schoolwork, taught him to carve wood, never pushed for affection. One day James slipped his small hand into Tom's while they walked to the creek. Tom nearly wept. Robert watched these moments with pain in his eyes, but also with dignity. He was losing the children gradually, inevitably. Blood called to blood. But he didn't lash out, didn't punish them for it. He simply loved them as best he could, for as long as they'd let him. One night, Tom found Robert sitting alone by the barn. "I'm going to leave," Robert said without preamble. "Not today. Not tomorrow, but soon. Maybe after Christmas." Tom sat beside him. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. The children need one father, not two. Sarah needs to stop being torn in half. And he swallowed hard. "I need to stop watching my family slip away piece by piece. They love you, I know. But they love you more. You're their history. I'm just the man who filled the gap." Robert looked at Tom. "Promise me something. Promise you'll take care of them. Really take care of them. Don't leave again. Don't let them lose another father." "I promise," Tom said hoarsely. "I swear it." They sat in silence. Two soldiers who'd fought on opposite sides, bound now by shared sacrifice and shared loss. December 25th, 1870, Christmas morning snow covered the farm like a blessing. The family gathered, still awkward, still broken, but together. Tom had carved wooden animals for the children. Robert gave them books. Sarah had knitted scarves for everyone, her hands creating something that might bind them all. After breakfast, Robert stood. "I have an announcement. I've taken a position at a farm near St. Louis. I'll be leaving after the new year." Sarah closed her eyes. Ellie bit her lip. James looked confused. "You don't have to go," Sarah whispered. "Yes, I do," Robert said gently. "This was never sustainable. We all knew it. Tom's their father. You were his wife first. The law will eventually recognize that. I'm just stepping aside before the courts force it." He knelt before James and Ellie. "I want you to know these 2 years with you have been the happiest of my life. You'll always be my children in my heart. And Tom," he looked up, "he's a good man. Better than most. He'll take care of you the way I would." James hugged Robert fiercely. Ellie cried. Sarah stood apart, her face a mask of grief. That night, Tom lay in the barn loft, staring at the ceiling. He'd won. He'd gotten his family back. But it felt like defeat, built on another man's sacrifice, another man's broken heart. The war had taught him that victory always came at a price. He just hadn't expected to still be paying it 5 years after the shooting stopped. January 1871. Epilogue. Robert left on a clear, cold morning. The family stood in the yard, watching his wagon disappear down the road. When he was gone, Tom moved his few possessions into the house. It should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like inheriting someone else's life. Sarah touched his arm. We'll give it time. We'll heal. All of us, will we? Tom asked. We have to, she said. We survived the war. We'll survive this too. The children went inside. Sarah and Tom stood alone in the yard of the farm they'd built together a lifetime ago. I'm sorry, Tom said. For all of it. For leaving, for surviving, for coming back. For everything. Don't be, Sarah said. You kept your promise. You came home. That's what matters. But as Tom looked at her, older now, scarred by grief and impossible choices, he wondered if coming home was the same as coming back. 7 years had changed them all. The war had taken more than lives. It had taken innocence, certainty, the simple comfort of knowing who you were and where you belonged. He'd spent 7 years searching for his identity, and now that he'd found it, he discovered it no longer fit quite right. Like a uniform worn by someone else, altered to suit a different body. But this was what he had. A second chance. A resurrection. Most men didn't get that. He'd spend the rest of his life trying to earn it. Tom took Sarah's hand, and together they walked toward the house. The door stood open. Inside, their children waited. A fire burned in the hearth. Dinner needed cooking. The farm needed tending. Life complicated, messy, imperfect life continued. The soldier had returned. Now he had to learn to live.